Hey guys, welcome back to another video. As some of you folks might have already watched, it has been a great 2024 salmon fishing season for me. It's almost the end of the season, which means it's time to pack up my gear and put it on the wall. As I was packing my gear, I remember a few folks reached out to me on TikTok and Instagram asking about the setup that I use. So I think it's a great opportunity for me to go over the setup that has worked for me this year. I'll be going over the rods, the reels that I have used, the fishing line, and even the lures that has worked for me. As you know, every situation and every system is different, so what works in one system doesn't necessarily work on the other one. So in this video, I'll be going into the specific details of the lures and the conditions that I fished them in. So stay tuned. So first of all, I would like to cover the spinning rods that I've used. So there were two rods, as you might have seen in the video, that I've used. One is the Ugly Stick Elite, and then the other one is the Ugly Stick GX2. So depending on the jig size that I was throwing, I was switching between an Ugly Stick Elite and an Ugly Stick GX2. So this is the Ugly Stick GX2 and this is the Ugly Stick Elite. Whenever I was throwing heavier jigs, I was using the Ugly Stick GX2, and for lighter lures, which is basically 3x8 and under, I was using the Ugly Stick Elite. Okay. And then talking about the reel, there's only one reel that I've been using for almost 3 years now, and it has held up pretty well. And this is the Pen Pursuit 3. Okay. This is a Pen Pursuit 3 and it's a size 2500 reel. I know you could go higher for coho salmon, up to 3000 and 3500, but this has held up pretty well and I have landed pretty decent chum on it as well. Okay. So that was all for the spinning gear that I used, like the spinning rod and spinning reel. Coming to the bait caster, this is the bait caster that I use for coho salmon. Well, you might keep hearing me saying coho salmon over and over again, and the reason for that is coho salmon is my favorite species to target. Most of the folks, when they throw spinners and spoons, they like to use a spinning reel. But in my case, I prefer to use a bait caster over a spinning reel for spinners and spoons. And the reason for that is, bait caster provides me more accuracy over the spinning reel. I like to throw my spinners and spoons under overhanging branches and places where I wouldn't be able to get with my spinning rod. So yeah. Talking about the bait caster, this is the bait caster that I've used and you might have seen in the videos a lot many times. It's a Kastking Max Steel. This particular bait caster has two tips to it. One is the medium heavy and then the other tip is just medium. So depending on the lure size that I'm throwing and the type of water I'm fishing, I switch between the medium and the medium heavy. If I'm throwing lures, basically spinners and spoons which are heavier than 3x8, or if I'm fishing faster current, I would use the medium heavy. But if I'm fishing frog water and throwing lighter lures, I use the medium rod. I use the medium tip. Okay. And talking about the reel, this is the reel that I use. It's a FlyPlum R2. I mean, all these are brands that most of the folks might have never heard about, but it works for me. So yeah, the good thing about this reel is that it allows me to cast really light lures that I won't be able to cast even on my spinning rod sometime and on my spinning reels. I don't want to go into the details about this reel because I have an entire video where I have mentioned the specifics of this particular reel and even showed a video where I was catching like multiple coho salmon on it. And the last setup that I want to talk about is my bait finesse rod and reel. Well, this is the first time that I have used it, but it has worked really well. The fish were really spooked later in the season. They weren't biting the jigs and spoons or the spinners that I was throwing at them. So I decided to downsize my jigs to 1/8 of an ounce. And the only way that I could cast them was with my bait finesse gear. So this was the bait finesse rod this is the bait finesse rod that I used, which is the Ace Hawk AG Venom. and it allowed me to cast down 1/8 ounce, and this rod has a really nice backbone to it as well, so I could easily handle even big fish on it. And the reel that I paired it up with is the iFishband Tendershoot BFS reel. This particular one, I have it for almost about a year, and I was only using it for bass and small panfish. Well, I know that this reel is well capable of handling big fish too, and it did so. So this particular one is the BFS reel. If you don't know what BFS is, there are tons of video on the internet about what exactly BFS or bait finesse system is, but I don't want to get into the specifics of that. For the BFS, I will be putting an entire video of the fish that I got on the BFS setup this season, and the video will be probably at the end of this. Well, I mean, the footage will be probably at the end of this particular video, so I hope you watch it till the end. And different situation, different setup, different lures, and as I mentioned before, not every situation is same, every situation is different, so you have to adapt according to the situation. Well, okay, let's get into the lures now. And one of the last big items that I want to cover is the landing net. It's a Lucky Strike landing net. I don't remember what exactly the model is. Well, it says B4 on here. So that was the net I used. It extends pretty long, so even if I was fishing high up, even if I was fishing on high banks, I was still able to land the fish with this particular net. The only problem that I faced with this net was the handle coming off every time. So if I was carrying it around, the handle used to slide out on its own. So to help with that situation, I customized my bag. I put some buckles on it, some straps, and I was easily able to fit my net in the bag, which basically freed up my hand for my rods. So yeah, that was really helpful. So talking about the fishing line, I was using the Suffix SFX braid, 20 pound, 10 pound, and at some point I even used this Dollarama 25 pound braided line. Well, it held up pretty strong, so I have no complaints about it. And for leader material, I wasn't using any fancy fluorocarbon. I was just using a trilene monofilament, and again, depending on the water I was fishing, I was switching between 10 pound, 12 pound and 14 pound. So yeah, that's pretty much about the fishing line. I won't be sharing every individual lure that I tried this season because that will make the video unnecessarily long. So what I'm gonna do is pick up my favorite lures, and I'm going to share the conditions that I fished them in. And then at the end, I'm going to share the lure that has produced me the most number of fish and also my confidence lure. So let's get into it. So I'll first start with spoons and spinners, and I will share you my strategy. Just for the simplicity, I'm just gonna talk in grams because the ounces, it's kind of confusing and you don't get the proper conversion when you convert from ounces to grams. These were the spoons that I always had in my tackle box. And the biggest one being this prime lure spoon, which is sitting at 18 grams. And then the smallest one that I had was this particular one, which is 4 gram. So my strategy for using spoon is every time I see moving water, I use spoons. And every time when I'm working frogwater or there's little to no current, I go with spinners. So if I'm fishing a heavy current, like if I was fishing in weather, I was using this particular one. Even though it did not get me any fish, I did manage to get a fish on this particular prime lure, which is 12 gram, and the fish that I got was a chum. But again, the kind of water that I was fishing wasn't favorable for using these heavier spoons. So this particular spoon, my friend custom paints it. Well, he's now a friend. I found him on Facebook Marketplace, as he was the guy who sold me all the jigs, and he knows his work really well. But yeah, this one is about 7 grams, I would say, and it's a really nice one. Again, a similar one made by him in pink color. This one is a little Clio, and this is again 7 grams. This one is a Gibbs croc 3x16, which I believe is 5 grams. I don't remember where I got this particular one from. It's really lightweight, it's about 4 grams. And then these ones are 4.5 gram. And then, as I already mentioned, this one is a 4 gram lure. So my strategy for using spoon, as I already mentioned, is whenever I'm seeing moving current, I go with spoons. And depending how fast the water is moving, I pick up the size of spoon that I think will get me the enough wobble. So one thing when I'm using spoon, I make sure that my spoons aren't spinning. I make sure that I get those wobbles when you retrieve the spoon, and I was able to feel it in my rod tip. That's the thing that I'm looking for when I'm fishing these spoons. And one particular strategy that has worked really well for me ever since I started fishing, not just salmon fishing, but whatever I was fishing for earlier, about when I started 20 years ago, is to have at least one confidence lure. And if you don't know what confidence lure is, it is basically something that you are so confident in that you have your blind faith in that lure. So basically you go to a river, the first lure that you pick out of the box is your confidence lure, because you know that that is going to get you a fish. And this particular season, it was this particular spoon that my friend made for me. And again, it could be different every season. So you have to try it out until you get your confidence lure for that season. So coming to spinners now. As I mentioned earlier, I like to use spinners when I'm fishing side channels, sloughs, or where there's no current, because I like to get the vibration going on in those kind of water. And again, similar strategy, I have different sizes and different colors. The biggest one being this Vibrax Blue Fox number 5, and then the smallest one being this Vibrax again, number 3. And then I have some prime lures in number 4, and then a lot of rooster tails. As I was talking about confidence lure in spoons, my confidence lure in spinners is this particular rooster tail, black with a pink stripe to it. And this was the lure that gave me my most number of fish last year. This year I only got maybe 1 or 2 on this one. Maybe I did not use it often, I don't know. As I said, it's different every year. So yeah, you have to keep trying until you find your confidence lure. So talking about jigs, you can clearly see I have a lot of jigs in here of various sizes. The biggest one being 1/2 ounce, and then the smallest one being 1/8 ounce. 1/2 ounce is what, 14 grams, and then the smallest one being 3.5 grams. Do I really need all of these jigs? Maybe not. So let me just pull out the ones that has worked for me, maybe last season as well as this season. Okay, let me get it out. It was hard to pick up my favorite jigs, but if I only wanted to have limited jigs in my tackle box or in my backpack, these are the ones that I'm going with. Just like spoons and spinners, I like to have different colors and different sizes of jigs in my tackle box. And then the biggest one being a 1/2 ounce jig, and the smallest ones that I only started using recently are these 1/8 ounce from Danielson. The colors that I personally like are the purples, blacks, chartreuse, pink. I cannot go fishing without these colors. There are really some fancy ones that I have in my box, but I generally don't reach out for them. And depending on the water clarity and the water conditions, I switch between these jigs. Yeah. So if I'm fishing really dirty water, I go with the chartreuse one. And if I'm fishing really clear water, then I go with the blacks and purples. So talking about these 1/8 ounce jigs, they have been working really well for me later in the season. And the primary reason that I think is that the fish are really spooked after being in the system for so long. They have to face predation, pressure from angling. So what I found is that they have shut their mouth. Even if I was using the 3x8 and 1/4 ounce jigs, they weren't biting anything. So I decided to switch up my tactics and I started using these smaller ones. And they have been hitting it, like they are choking on it. So I think that's a good segue for me to continue the remaining part of the video with what I have been using recently. Later in the season, these 1/8 ounce jigs, and stay tuned and enjoy the video. I have been using BFS for almost about 5 years now, but still, I was a little skeptical for using it for salmon fishing. But after watching some pros use 10-pound line for coho salmon, I became confident that I can do it too. Well, one thing was proven, that the jigs just work fine, but the only challenge I was initially having was getting the right hook set. As some of you might have already watched, I only used medium fast action rod for twitching jigs. So it was a bit of learning curve for me to use this light power, moderate action BFS rod. It was definitely a little bit frustrating, and I believe it is true for trying out anything new, but it's on us to keep trying. Oh, that's a hatchery. Okay, we got ourselves a nice hatchery. Dark, so we gotta let it go. I don't keep such a dark fish. Okay, well.
All right, I'll head down. I'll try that group pile over there.
Sure.
Good luck, man.
Yeah, thank
Hope
you.
you twitch one out.
Yeah. It is perfect day to get out. Like. The best thing about using finesse jigs or any other finesse lures is the stealth that you can make your cast with. When using traditional lures, you make a lot of splash on the water, but these finesse jigs make almost no commotion. Fish on. Oh, it's a bright one. Yeah, it's a bright silver. Yeah. It's a keeper. Yeah. Oh, it's super white. It was the last hatchery fish for me, and I was expecting it to be my last fish of the season 2. When retaining a coho, I always like to go with the ideology of it's only going home if it's chrome.
Oh no, that should taste pretty good.
I know, right?
Yeah, no, she's nice. Yeah, she's beautiful. That's probably, no, she's only been in a couple days max, man.
Yeah, I know.
Perfect. That's awesome.
I know, it's chrome, yeah. Well, I was expecting that this is the end of the season for me, but the rivers were still crowded, which meant there are more fish to be caught. Yeah. I wasn't expecting to catch any fish that day, so I got this tiny net just in case if I hooked into any of those odd jacks. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, stop. Stay still. It felt like it was the last fish of the season. But hold on, one of the good days is yet to come. It was really late in the season, and I thought it was all over. But the finesse jigs were just shining over everything else. Well, one thing I definitely need to learn is to learn from my mistakes. I got the tiny net once again. I remember some time ago someone asked me, when do I stop targeting salmon? Well, I have an answer for you. Last season, I stopped when I got skunked 4 days in a row. But this season, I was catching fish late in November and even early December, as you can see. So the strategy I had at the back of my mind was to stop targeting salmon for this year, and I hooked into 2 dark ones. Well, this was the dark fish number 1 for me. After hooking into a couple fish, I always like to retie my lure, particularly when I'm using a light leader. Like in this case, I was using an 8-pound leader. By this time, I became so much confident in my finesse gear. One big difference between using those 3x8 ounce jigs versus these 1/8 ounce jigs is that I don't need to aggressively twitch like I would do with my traditional spinning gear. I got a lot of sand inside my fishing reel when trying to land those fish without a landing net. So I can't emphasize the importance of having a good landing net when you're salmon fishing. Till this day, I'm still trying to get the sand out of my reel. Since my reel was making those weird noise, I just wanted to stop and go back home. But since this was certainly my last trip on the river, I wanted to make the best out of it. Well, sticking around and trying for more was definitely fruitful, because this was definitely the biggest fish of the season for me. I was surprised to get such a chrome fish this late in the season, and I did not even get to see whether it was a hatchery or a wild fish. The fish was so big that I did not even bother to get it in my landing net. And this is why, again, I would say it is important to have a good landing net. This wouldn't have had happened if I had my salmon net with me. At this point of time, I was literally able to hear the sand being crushed in my gears. This was my second dark fish of the season. Well, it only meant one thing. That's time for me to pack up my gear and put it on the wall. I knew that I could go on and catch fish for another few days, but I really did not want to bother these spawners and let them do their thing. They have already endured a lot in their journey. It just felt like yesterday when I hooked my first salmon on September 1st. And then I got skunked for almost 20 days in a row. It picked up for me on October 15th. My goal was to get 8 hatchery fish this season. Well, I managed to get 7. Overall, it has been a great year. I got to learn a lot of things and made some new friends along the way. And as I always say, stay tuned for more adventures.